Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about book series, specifically book series I've read, finished, DNF'd, and the ones that I have on my shelves, book one of, that I want to start. And so I'm showing you a bit of my book collection. So my shelves might look disheveled behind me because there's a huge pile right here that I'm going to show you in a second. But this was all inspired because it is currently series September. This is a read along happening in the booktube world, hosted by Krista from Books and Jams and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand. And I was inspired by them to think about the series that I have, that I'm in the middle of, that I've DNF'd, and I didn't really know how to organize that. But luckily both of them, specifically Sarah, shared a video of her spreadsheet and I was totally inspired by that, basically copied it. So I'll show you a little bit of what I spent way too much time on organizing, but I went through my whole memory, history, and Goodreads and everything that I've ever kept track of reading. Really up till middle school, I don't remember much of elementary, but I remembered a few. And I wrote down every series that I read and then that I DNF'd. So I'll try not to nerd out too much, but I just am so proud that I organized all of these things. I'll show you my screen recording, so I'll minimize myself. And again, I pretty much copied almost exactly from Sarah of the layout. And so I will link her video down below. Please go watch that. And I think she was inspired by someone else. But basically, I have three sections: series that I'm currently reading that I want to finish, series that I have finished and read from, and then books series that I DNF'd. I either read one book of or more and I just don't really have an interest in continuing. The ones that I like are maybes, like maybe I would read the other book from, or I could be convinced to. I marked in this like blue color. And then I have all the book series that I'm interested in, and these ones I may or may not own. I actually probably should add a little column of whether I own the book or not, because I will show you all of the ones that I do own, and since I want to prioritize books on my shelves, maybe you guys can chime in of which ones I should read. But really quick, if I go to the top, and the series that I'm in the middle of, realizing is a lot less than I thought. Like I thought I was in the middle of so many series, but I'm not actually that behind. The big one is Outlander. I've been reading that for years and I still have quite a few books to go, but that's really only like the super long one that I'm in the middle of. Lightfall is a graphic novel series and third book is coming out next year. I'm all caught up with that. Molly the Maid, I didn't realize that was going to be a series, kind of wish it wasn't, but I do plan to read the second one and then we'll see whether I DNF it or want to continue it. The Giver, I read this book way back when in school. I didn't realize it was a quartet. I would definitely reread The Giver and then read the remaining books in the series. I'd kind of want to do it all in one go, maybe all in 1 month. Little Women I read and loved, and there's a continuation in that series, so I'd love to get to those. Holes, there is another book as well, and I didn't think I realized it was duology, but I reread Holes not that long ago, like a few years back with my husband, and so I would consider reading the second book in the series to complete that duology. And then the other one is Hogwarts Library. I didn't realize this was a series, but Fantastic Beasts, Quidditch Through the Ages, and The Tales of Beetle the Bard would be the one that I have left to read to complete that series. And because I'm a completionist, I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to just read that. It's probably a short audiobook, and then I can move it into my finished series, which is down here. 23 series that I've finished, again, from my memory. I'm sure I read a lot more in elementary school that I just can't recall. And I did mark ones, like if it's a completed series and then a novella or a fourth book comes out like years later, I'm not totally interested in reading that, so I kind of marked it as read. And I also did mark like whether I would be interested in rereading or not, and I put maybes for a lot of the ones that I read as a kid that I would maybe revisit. I definitely have a lot of series that I'm like, no, I wouldn't read that again, at least not right now, and definitely some that I want to reread in the future or see myself rereading time and time again. The big exception to like a prequel coming out or a book like way later would be The Hunger Games, because I recently read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I will talk about my thoughts on that in my September wrap-up. I read The Hunger Games not that long ago. I reread the whole series within this last year, and so it wasn't that out of the box for me to read this prequel that came out way later, and the movie's coming out, so there's some anticipation around that. But for example, like I read the whole Twilight series when everyone was reading Twilight. I have zero interest in reading Midnight Sun, and I don't really plan on rereading the series ever. I wrote maybe one day I would, but for example, like The Arc of the Side, I read this series in 2020 when I first joined Booktube, and I started hearing all of these like books that you should read. Everyone was raving about this one. I read all 3 books in like a month. I enjoyed my time overall. It's a great series. But then a short story collection came out, I think last year, Gleanings, and it's been too long from that series that I don't think I would be interested in the short story collection or really see myself picking it up unless I revisit the whole thing. And I wrote no on want to reread. Like I don't really see myself rereading the series in the future, at least again for now, maybe years down the line, if I'm ever reading like YA dystopian books again that I read when I was younger or something like that. But for now, I don't really have an interest in that. So that is all of those. And then I have 43 series that I did not finish. Again, I read one book from, maybe more, and I just don't really have an interest at this point in continuing. Some of these are maybes. Those are the ones that are in a different color. And the ones that are in a different color are honestly like books that I enjoyed. Like, they weren't bad. I didn't hate them. I didn't like think that they were terrible reads. I just don't really see myself rereading it, or again, it's been too long of a time in between. I'm such like a binge reader that I'm like, if it's gonna be a series that I'm gonna commit to, except for Outlander because it's been years, I kind of want to read it in like one go, in one time, because I just don't want to like relearn the world or relearn the characters or get to know them again. I'd like to stay in it for as long as I can. That's how I've always been with TV and books and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so there's a lot on here. I'm curious if you guys are ever interested in hearing my unpopular opinions, because quite a few of these are probably unpopular that I've only read one book from and have no interest in picking up again. Again, that could be a whole other video. And then I have a ton of series that I'm interested in. 71, I believe. A lot of these are quite interested in, and some are like, oh, who knows, we'll see, maybe. I kind of just put everything in there that I've had any kind of interest peaked of, but I don't want to dwell on those too much because quite a few of these I don't even own. But I want to go into the books that I do own. So I'm gonna just kind of go through these very briefly. A lot of these I don't know the synopsis of, some I do. And like I said, please let me know which ones I should prioritize. This is where I want to hear from you. I love getting recommendations from you guys and hearing, hey, which ones should I pick up? Because I realized I'm not in the middle of that many series. I have room to start a few more, so I want to hear which ones I should. And if you have any recommendations apart from the ones I own, please let me know down below too. Like any that you think would totally work for me, because now I'm just like very intrigued in this project after spending so much time writing all the series that I want to read. So yeah, recommendations down below, please and thank you. Let's get into the books that I have. I'm just gonna go through my piles and stacks, starting with historical mystery, and then I'll move into my historical. Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. This is like a 19 book series, so it would be a long commitment, but you can make your way slowly, I think. This starts off right after World War I in London, following a female detective investigator. Not really sure, but I know people love this series. Girl Waits with Gun by Amy Stewart. I really like this cover. It's like newspapery. I believe there's like 5 or so books in this series, and this feels more like Midwest, like it's a female sheriff standing up for herself and like feminist-y themes, maybe, I'm not sure, but I'm intrigued about that one. I'm gonna stop saying that because I'm gonna be intrigued about all of these. A Great Deliverance by Elizabeth George. This was never on my radar except for recently when Shelley Swearingen talked about this author, and I found this at a used bookstore, so I snagged it. This is also a very long, I think like 19 book mystery series. There's a PBS show, it seems like. This is like some investigator, also British series that I'm intrigued by. I should stop saying that. A historical one that's also a little bit magical realism. The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. So many people have talked about this one. This one keeps coming up, keeps getting reemerged as like a favorite for so many. We'll see if the magical realism aspects of this book work for me. Then I have Molokai by Alan Brennert. Talked about reading this summer, didn't quite happen, but I'm still very much interested in reading this. This is a duology, and I have both of the books actually on my shelves. And this will forever be on my summer TBR until I finally read it. So didn't happen this summer, maybe next summer. The Henna Artist, this one I'm on the fence about. This is a now trilogy. There's 3 books in the series. The last one just came out this last year, and I've heard mixed things about this book. For the most part, I think this is like a 3-star read for a lot of people, and that's not a bad experience, but I don't know if I want to commit to that. I feel the same about this series that I do about the Chantel Clayton Cuba series. Those are both like historical fiction series that I've just heard very middle of the road things about, and I don't know if I'm gonna love it, but I do want to try the first book. It's kind of like a take it or leave it. I could be convinced to read it. I could be convinced to put this book in my little free library. Next, I have Ross Poldark by Winston Graham. This is also a very long series. I want to say it's like 12 books. I did watch the TV miniseries, which I really enjoyed, but it's been long enough that I don't quite remember, so I'd love to jump back into this world. And I think once I'm done with Outlander, this will be my next historical one. I just pulled both of these, but The Kitchen House and Glory Over Everything is a duology set on the turn of the 19th century in Virginia. Has to do with, I think, like the Jim Crow South. Not entirely sure, but people love this duology, love this book. Really recommend it all the time for historical fiction fans. Another one I'm very curious how it'll go, but Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I might be in the camp of not loving this series, but with how much Shelley Swearingen loves it, I don't know that our tastes fully align, but I really want to try it and I really want to love it because this is so well praised and admired. We'll see how it goes. This is all about Thomas Cromwell, who served on the court of Henry VIII, and it's all about like the behind the scenes mischievous stuff that happened during this Tudor time period. Speaking of the Tudors, The Lady of the Rivers by Philippa Gregory. I got this as a gift from a wonderful viewer subscriber, Louisa. She sent me this because I mentioned in a video that I wanted to try Philippa Gregory, but I had no idea where to start because there's so many books. This is is, I think, a 10 or 12 book series as well. And the most famously known book is The Other Boleyn Girl. Don't think you have to read all of these in order, but this is technically book 1 of that long Tudor series. I still need to try this book, need to try this author. I really appreciate being sent this. This is very sweet, but it's on my list and it's a beautiful edition of the book. And I think that I would really love learning about this Tudor time period through these historical fiction reads. One that I'm also very curious about, it seems to be a love it or hate it, is The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Auel. This is a cult favorite. Whenever I've talked about this one, there's a camp of people who are like, it's amazing, I loved it, and there's a camp of people who are like, it sucked. So we'll see where I fall. There's also, I think, 6 or 8 books in the series, something along those lines. I have the first 3. I scored them at a used bookstore. This is set in like the Ice Age time period, like cavemen. I'm very intrigued by that. That is like a prehistoric historical fiction that I really have no exposure in when it comes to any kind of book literature or even movies for that matter, besides like the Ice Age. So yeah, I definitely want to try this one and hopefully really like it and just be swept up. I feel like that'd be really fun. Next, I have The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsley, another historical fiction author that I've heard wonderful things about, that I really want to try. This is a chunky one. I'm a little nervous it's a bit slow because that's what I've heard feedback from people that I trust on here, like Miriam Elizabeth Reads. I believe she tried to read it and just didn't really jive with it. But this is set in Scotland and it's kind of compared to like Outlander. Like for fans of Outlander, you would also like this book. So that's why I'm intrigued by it. And finally, in historical, this big old chunky chunkster, heavy, hefty book, The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I don't think I've heard a single person say that this is bad or not worth it. People are like, just dive in. It's a commitment, but it seems to be worth it from everyone singing this book's praises and this whole series praises and this author's praises. So once I feel motivated enough to pick it up, I hope to really enjoy it. A classic, I have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. No, I have never read these. I have never read The Hobbit either. I've tried to read these. I've started Fellowship of the Ring on audio and I got like 25% in years and years ago and I stopped, but not forever. Definitely want to try to read the series and read it and love it. I love the movies. I know it's totally different, but I love the movies, so I can't imagine not liking these. But I do know that I just have to like prepare for slower, meandering kind of classic fantasy rather than like high stakes, maybe action-packed as fantasy is maybe these days. But yeah, definitely a trilogy that I want to get to. Next, I have a couple contemporaries that I'm unsure about. These are totally on the line. I could be convinced either way. So first one is You by Carolyn Kepnes. I watched the first 2 seasons of the show. I don't know if I have interest in reading the books. There's 4 of them and potentially more. This is a psychological, like you're in the mind of a serial killer. Not my favorite kind of thing, but I could be intrigued because I thought the show was well done. But I don't know if I'll ever be in the headspace for this. I've had great success with Kristen Hanna's historical fiction. I've not really tried any for contemporaries. And I've heard mostly mediocre things about Firefly Lane. This is a duology and there's now a TV miniseries. I honestly am more interested to try the TV series than I am to try to read these 2 books. It's also on my summer TBR for a while because, you know, fireflies. Never seen a firefly. That's on my bucket list. That's besides the point. I don't know if I should read this. I feel like I should try it. I'm on the fence about it. A couple dystopian futuristic sci-fis. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is also a duology. I have watched the first season of The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu years back. It was brutal, but really well done. I haven't read this book yet. I don't know if I'm gonna love it because it's quite intense. And I think my reading tastes have changed since I originally purchase this to try to read. So we'll see, but it feels like a modern classic, one that, you know, you have to at least try. Another author that you need to at least read, Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower. I have this one in Kindred. This is a duology as well. Which one will I read first? Maybe Kindred. Everyone says that's where you should start because that's a great one, but I've heard wonderful things about this as well. This is all about like climate change and the end of the world kind of thing. Set in California, not entirely sure, but I've heard amazing things. A couple non-fictions, My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell. This is a trilogy about a family that goes to Greece or the island of Corfu, and this is a series about that family and the adventures that they go on. I think this is very much compared to James Herriot's All Creatures Great and Small series. Just very sweet, wholesome, cozy animal escapades. Family stories, that kind of situation. Definitely want to try this first book and see if I want to continue reading on with that. If any of you did see, I did put in the DNF section the All Creatures Great Small. I read the first 2 books and I thought they were sweet and they were great. I don't really see myself continuing on. I don't own them, not like gravitating towards picking them up. I don't know if this will be similar. And this is technically not a series, but in my mind they are companion books and they go together. That is Beautiful Boy and Tweak by Nick Sheff and David Sheff. I watched the movie with Steve Carell and Timothy Chalamet. Amazing movie. This is all about Nick's chef's experience being on meth and how it ruined his life, and Beautiful Boy is about the father's side of that experience. And I know these are tragic and hard to read and absolutely devastating, but I feel like they're really good and I want to try. I did watch the movie, so I feel like I know how everything turns out, but I do have these and I feel like they go together and I don't know when I'll read them. And finally, let me end with my middle grade children's YA stack. First one being Aragon by Christopher Paolini. I may or may have read this book in middle school or elementary school. I cannot remember. I didn't put it on my series list anywhere. I'm intrigued to try it once I want to dive into this world of dragons, which seems to be the theme. Everyone's obsessed with dragons these days. I'm curious how I'm going to fare with this because I know I don't have nostalgia tied to it. I think it might be a very different reading experience reading this as an adult who's never been exposed to this kind of story before. Does it still hold up? Is it good? Because I think like Harry Potter does. I read those as an adult. I don't know if this dragon world will work for me, but I want to try it. Another fantasy I have the first one of is Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. Everyone loves these, so I'm gonna try it and hopefully we'll love them as well. There's 9 books. I think 10 in total will be released for this whole series. I have The Green Glass House by Kate Milford. I plan to read this in the winter time because this just feels like the perfect cozy wintry middle grade read. I have The Borrowers by Mary Norton. I think I read this in elementary, but again, I can't remember enough to count it. This is quite a long series and I know there's a lot of them, but I found this in a little free library, this sweet little edition. And then like I mentioned in that series spreadsheet, I have The Giver by Lewis Lowry. So I'm glad I found this one and I definitely want to find the other 3 or check them out from the library and read the whole quartet as a whole from start to finish because they're quite easy short reads. So those are all the series books that I have book 1 of that I want to start at some point, and you can tell that some I was more excited about than others. Like I said, let me know in the comments recommendations. Which of these that I own should I prioritize, and or are there other ones that you would recommend to me that maybe I don't have on my radar yet? Thank you so much for watching. Happy September, happy reading, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye.